When dealing with avoidant individuals, one of the most important things you can do is to stop chasing them and instead turn your attention inward. This may sound counterintuitive at first, especially if your instinct is to reach out, fix things, or try harder to bridge the gap. However, the truth is that chasing only amplifies their need for distance and reinforces the dynamics of their avoidant tendencies. To truly create a space where reconnection is possible, you need to shift the focus back to yourself. Avoidants often feel overwhelmed in relationships, particularly when they sense a loss of control or an expectation to meet emotional demands they are not ready to handle. When you chase them, it triggers their deep-seated fear of being engulfed, pushing them even further away. Instead of closing that gap by pursuing them, you must allow the distance to exist for a while. This doesn't mean you give up on the relationship. Rather, it means creating a healthier balance by respecting their need for space while simultaneously reclaiming your own. During this time, redirect your energy towards self-improvement and personal growth. Reflect on your emotions, needs, and behaviors. Ask yourself what parts of the relationship made you feel uncertain or dependent on their responses. You might have said to yourself, by addressing these areas, you not only strengthen your sense of self-worth but also cultivate emotional resilience. This resilience will prevent you from reacting impulsively to their distancing behaviors and allow you to remain composed and grounded. In the space you create by stepping back, you'll find an opportunity to rediscover your own passions and priorities. Take up activities that make you happy. Spend time with supportive friends and family, or explore hobbies that bring you fulfillment. This shift in focus not only benefits your well-being, but also changes how the avoidant person perceives you. When they see you thriving independently rather than seeking constant reassurance from them, it can create a sense of intrigue and admiration. Avoidants are often drawn to individuals who exude confidence and self-sufficiency, because it alleviates their fear of being overwhelmed. Furthermore, stepping back allows the avoidant to process their emotions without external pressure. They need time to recognize their feelings and evaluate the connection on their own terms. When you're constantly present, trying to fix things or seeking answers, it doesn't give them the space to do this. However, when you focus on yourself and step away, you grant them the freedom to reflect and potentially miss the positive aspects of the relationship. It's important to remember that this process requires patience and consistency. You may not see immediate results, and that's okay. The goal is not to manipulate or force their return, but to create an environment where they feel safe to come back willingly. And when they do, they are more likely to approach the relationship with a renewed sense of openness, because they've seen that you respect their boundaries and can stand strong on your own. By redirecting your energy from chasing them to nurturing yourself, you not only break the cycle of pushing them further away, but also build a foundation for a healthier dynamic. When you prioritize your growth and well-being, you lead by example and create a space where genuine reconnection can occur naturally. So, step back, focus inward, and trust the process. The rest will follow. Respecting the need for independence is critical when dealing with avoidant individuals. They often perceive relationships as a potential threat to their autonomy, which can cause them to withdraw or shut down emotionally. This reaction isn't necessarily a reflection of how they feel about you or the relationship, but rather a way of protecting themselves from becoming overwhelmed. By understanding and honoring their need for independence, you can create an environment that feels safe and inviting for them, rather than one that triggers their defenses. It's important to recognize that independence is not about rejecting connection, but about maintaining a sense of personal freedom within it. If you keep flocking and flocking, finally you're preventing yourself from living within connection, but about maintaining a sense of personal freedom within it. Avoidants value their ability to manage their lives without feeling overly reliant on others, and they need to feel in control of their emotions and decisions. When you respect this by giving them space, you demonstrate that you understand their needs and aren't trying to take that control away. This can help lower their defenses and make them more comfortable engaging with you. This doesn't mean you have to disappear or act distant. It's about finding a balance. When you respect their independence, you're allowing them the room to come to you when they're ready, rather than trying to force interaction on your terms. This approach requires patience, as avoidants often need more time to process their feelings and decide how they want to engage. By waiting and allowing them to move at their own pace, you show that you're not trying to pressure them into a response, which can make all the difference. Unconditional love. The ability to recognize people as flaws, an unconditional one. At the same time, respecting their independence doesn't mean neglecting your own needs. It's okay to have boundaries and express what you require in a relationship, but how you communicate these needs matters. Avoid blaming or demanding language, as this can make them feel trapped or accused. Instead, frame your feelings in a way that's open and non-confrontational. For example, saying something like, "I value our time together, but I also understand your need for space," conveys understanding while still expressing your feelings. Avoidants are often sensitive to perceived expectations in relationships, so keeping things light and non-imposing can help ease their fears. When they feel that their independence is being respected, they're more likely to engage willingly rather than out of obligation. This can lead to deeper, more meaningful connections because they're choosing to be present rather than feeling pressured into it. It's also worth noting that respecting their independence doesn't mean ignoring them or avoiding communication altogether. Small gestures of support and reassurance can go a long way, as long as they're not overbearing. A simple message letting them know you're there if they need you can help maintain a sense of connection without making them feel overwhelmed. It's about showing that you're present but not intrusive, allowing them the freedom to navigate the relationship in a way that feels comfortable for them. By fostering an environment where their independence is respected, you create the space for mutual growth. They'll feel safer exploring their emotions, and you'll avoid the cycle of pushing and pulling that often defines avoidant dynamics. Over time, this respect can lead to greater trust and openness, as they'll see that the relationship doesn't threaten their autonomy but instead supports their individuality. Respecting independence is not just about giving them space, but about recognizing and honoring the unique way they navigate relationships. It's about understanding that their need for distance isn't a rejection of you, but a way of managing their own fears and boundaries. When you can approach this dynamic with empathy and patience, you pave the way for a connection that feels genuine and balanced. In doing so, you create the possibility for them to come back, not out of obligation, but because they feel safe and valued. Communicating calmly and without judgment is one of the most effective ways to reach an avoidant individual. When you're dealing with someone who tends to withdraw or shut down in the face of emotional intensity, the way you express yourself can significantly impact whether they feel safe to open up or feel the need to retreat further. Avoidants often have a heightened sensitivity to conflict and criticism, even if it's subtle, so it's essential to create an environment where they don't feel attacked or pressured. The first step is to approach every conversation with patience. It's easy to become frustrated when someone is distant or unresponsive, but reacting with anger or desperation will only reinforce their fears about emotional closeness. Instead, take a moment to ground yourself before engaging. Focus on what you truly want to communicate, and try to detach your message from the heat of the moment. When your emotions are calm and balanced, you're more likely to create a space where they feel comfortable listening and responding. Equally important is the tone of your communication. Avoidants are often sensitive to anything that feels like blame or judgment. Statements that start with, "you always," or "why can't you just," are likely to trigger their defenses, making productive communication almost impossible. Knowing the difference between trustworthy beliefs and benevoling things, this is a very important principle to start with. Instead, frame your concerns using "I" statements that express your feelings without assigning fault. For example, saying, "I feel disconnected when we don't talk for a few days," is far more constructive than saying, "You never talk to me anymore." The former invites understanding, while the latter feels accusatory. It's also helpful to keep your messages concise and focused. Avoidants can become overwhelmed by lengthy or emotionally charged conversations, so try to express your thoughts clearly and directly without overloading them. This doesn't mean you should suppress your feelings or sugarcoat important issues. but rather that you should deliver them in a way that feels manageable. For example, instead of diving into a long monologue about everything that's gone wrong, focus on one specific issue and address it calmly. Listening is another critical component of communicating with an avoidant. Often they struggle to articulate their feelings, partly because they fear judgment or conflict. By giving them space to express themselves without interrupting or rushing to fill the silence, you demonstrate that their perspective matters. This patience can encourage them to share more over time. When they do speak, make an effort to validate their feelings, even if you don't fully agree. Phrases like, "I can see why you'd feel that way," or "that makes sense from your perspective," show that you're trying to understand them rather than dismissing their emotions. Nonverbal cues also play a significant role in fostering a safe space for communication. Maintain open body language, avoid crossing your arms or appearing closed off, and make eye contact without staring. These subtle signals can convey warmth and openness, helping to ease the tension and making them feel more comfortable in your presence. It's worth noting that communicating without judgment doesn't mean avoiding all difficult topics. It's about addressing them in a way that prioritizes connection over conflict. When you approach conversations with curiosity instead of criticism, you create opportunities for deeper understanding. This can be particularly important with avoidants, as they often interpret conflict as a sign that the relationship is unsafe. By showing them that disagreements can be navigated calmly and respectfully, you help to build trust and dismantle their fears about intimacy. Ultimately, the goal of calm and non-judgmental communication is to create a foundation of trust and safety. When avoidants feel that they can express themselves without fear of being criticized or overwhelmed, they're far more likely to engage and open up. Over time, this consistent approach can lead to a more balanced and fulfilling connection, making it possible for them to come back willingly and authentically. Demonstrating consistency without smothering is a delicate balance, especially when interacting with avoidant individuals. Consistency is vital because it provides a sense of reliability and stability, qualities that can help soothe the underlying fears that drive avoidant tendencies. However, it's equally important to avoid coming across as overbearing or intrusive, as this can trigger their need for distance and reinforce their avoidance patterns. Striking this balance is key to fostering trust and creating an environment where they feel safe to engage. Consistency begins with showing up in predictable and steady ways. Avoidants often struggle with feelings of insecurity, even if they don't express it openly. When you are dependable in your words and actions, it helps counter their fear that relationships are inherently unpredictable or unreliable. Together often becomes easier to be. It's like building a house. This doesn't mean you have to be perfect. Rather, it's about being someone they know they can count on over time. For example, if you say you'll call, follow through. If you promise to give them space, honor that promise without constantly checking in. These small but meaningful acts demonstrate your reliability and build a foundation of trust. At the same time, it's crucial to give them the space they need to navigate the relationship at their own pace. Avoidants are particularly sensitive to feeling suffocated or overwhelmed, so even well-meaning efforts to provide reassurance can sometimes have the opposite effect. The key is to offer consistency in a way that doesn't feel invasive. This might mean maintaining a steady presence in their life, without always seeking immediate reciprocation. For instance, a simple check-in message to let them know you're thinking of them, without expecting a response right away, can be a powerful way to show you care while respecting their boundaries. Another important aspect of consistency is emotional stability. Avoidants are often wary of relationships because they fear being caught up in emotional chaos or drama. When you remain emotionally grounded, even during challenging moments, it reassures them that they can rely on you without being drawn into conflict or unpredictability. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or pretending everything is fine when it's not, but rather expressing yourself in a calm and composed manner. For example, instead of reacting impulsively when they pull away, take a step back and assess the situation before responding. This steady approach helps them see that you're a safe and stable presence in their life. Patience also plays a significant role in demonstrating consistency without smothering. Avoidants often take longer to process their emotions and feel comfortable opening up. It's natural to want to speed up this process, especially if you're eager to strengthen the connection. But pushing too hard can backfire. Instead, focus on the long-term perspective. Trust that your steady and respectful presence will make a difference over time, even if you don't see immediate results. This patience not only benefits the avoidant, but also helps you develop a sense of resilience and self-assurance. It's equally important to maintain your own independence and sense of self. Avoidants are often drawn to partners who exhibit confidence and self-sufficiency, because it alleviates their fear of being engulfed. When you have your own interests, goals, and social connections, it not only enhances your well-being, but also demonstrates that you're not solely reliant on the relationship for your happiness. This balance can make the avoidant feel more comfortable, as it reduces the pressure they might feel to meet all of your emotional needs. Ultimately, the goal of consistency without smothering is to create an environment where the avoidant person feels secure enough to engage with you on their terms. It's about showing that you're there for them without overwhelming them, proving through your actions that you respect their boundaries while remaining a dependable and steady presence. Over time, this approach can help bridge the gap and allow for a deeper, more meaningful connection to develop naturally. Showing emotional maturity and self-awareness is a cornerstone when building a meaningful connection with someone who has avoidant tendencies. And avoidants are often hesitant to engage deeply because they fear emotional chaos or becoming overwhelmed by their partner's needs. By demonstrating that you can manage your own emotions and approach the relationship with self-awareness, you create an environment that feels safe and non-threatening. This allows the avoidant to feel more comfortable and less pressured, paving the way for a healthier dynamic. Emotional maturity begins with the ability to regulate your own emotions, especially during moments of tension or uncertainty. Avoidants are particularly sensitive to heightened emotional displays because they perceive them as a loss of control, which reinforces their instinct to withdraw. When you can approach situations calmly and thoughtfully, even when things feel challenging, it communicates that you are capable of handling the ebb and flow of emotions without falling apart or resorting to blame. For example, if they pull away or become distant, rather than reacting with panic or anger, take a moment to reflect on what might be happening and respond in a measured way. This stability reassures them that they won't be pulled into emotional turmoil, which is one of their primary fears. Self-awareness also plays a critical role. This means being attuned to your own emotions, triggers, and patterns of behavior. By understanding what drives your reactions, you can approach the relationship with greater intentionality. For instance, if their distancing behavior makes you feel anxious, it's important to recognize that anxiety and address it internally before bringing it into the relationship. This might involve journaling, talking to a trusted friend, or seeking professional support to work through your feelings. When you take responsibility for managing your own emotions, you avoid placing that burden on the avoidant, which helps maintain balance in the relationship. Another aspect of emotional maturity is being able to communicate your feelings in a way that's constructive and non-confrontational. Avoidants often struggle to process emotions, so bombarding them with intense or accusatory language can feel overwhelming. Instead, focus on expressing your feelings calmly and clearly. For example, saying, "I feel a little distant from you lately, and I just want to check in," is far more effective than saying, "Why are you ignoring me?" The former invites connection, while the latter can trigger defensiveness. When you approach conversations with care and thoughtfulness, you create opportunities for genuine dialogue. It's also important to recognize that emotional maturity involves respecting their boundaries and understanding that their behavior isn't always a reflection of you. Avoidants often need time and space to process their feelings, and this isn't necessarily an indication that they don't care. By giving them the freedom to navigate their emotions without taking their distancing personally, you demonstrate a level of emotional resilience that can help bridge the gap. This doesn't mean ignoring your own needs, but rather finding a way to balance them with an understanding of theirs. Being self-aware also involves evaluating your own role in the relationship dynamic. Ask yourself whether you might be unintentionally reinforcing their avoidant tendencies by over-pursuing or reacting impulsively. When you take the time to reflect on your own actions and adjust them accordingly, it creates a more harmonious interaction. This level of introspection not only benefits the relationship, but also contributes to your personal growth, making you a stronger and more balanced individual. Lastly, emotional maturity means having the patience to let the relationship evolve naturally. Avoidants often need more time to feel comfortable with closeness, and rushing the process can backfire. By showing that you're willing to move at a pace that works for both of you, you communicate that you're in it for the long haul, which can help build trust over time. When you bring emotional maturity and self-awareness to the table, you foster a connection that feels stable and secure, creating the foundation for a relationship where the avoidant feels safe to engage. Over time, this consistent approach can lead to a deeper bond that thrives on mutual respect and understanding. Practicing patience and embracing the long-term perspective is essential when connecting with someone who has avoidant tendencies. Relationships with avoidant individuals often move at a slower pace, as they require time to feel secure and comfortable. Rushing the process or expecting immediate change can lead to frustration on your part and further withdrawal on theirs. However, when you adopt a mindset of patience and focus on the bigger picture, you create an environment that fosters trust and gradual progress. Patience begins with understanding that avoidance is often a deeply ingrained coping mechanism. It's not something that can be overcome quickly or through sheer force of will. Avoidants have likely spent years reinforcing their patterns of withdrawal as a way to manage their fears of intimacy or dependency. Expecting them to break those habits overnight is unrealistic. Instead, approach the relationship with compassion and a willingness to meet them where they are, rather than where you want them to be. This perspective also means accepting that progress may not always be linear. There will likely be moments of closeness, followed by periods of withdrawal. Rather than viewing these fluctuations as setbacks, try to see them as part of the natural ebb and flow of the relationship. Recognize that each step forward, no matter how small, is a sign of growth. For example, an avoidant may open up about their feelings in one conversation, but retreat in the next. This doesn't mean the connection is failing, it's simply part of their process. By maintaining patience, you can weather these moments without losing sight of the bigger picture. Embracing the long-term perspective also involves focusing on what you can control, namely, your own actions and mindset. Avoidants are more likely to engage when they feel that the relationship is a safe and stable place. By consistently demonstrating your reliability, understanding, and emotional maturity, you create the conditions for them to gradually let down their guard. This doesn't mean suppressing your needs or desires, but rather finding ways to express them that don't feel overwhelming or demanding. For instance, instead of insisting on immediate closeness, you might gently communicate your hopes for the future, while allowing them the time to process. Patience also requires managing your expectations and resisting the urge to compare your relationship to others. Every relationship is unique, and what works for one couple may not work for another. Avoidants often take longer to build trust and connection, and it's important to honor their pace without feeling the need to measure your progress against external standards. By focusing on the unique dynamics of your relationship rather than societal norms or timelines, you can better appreciate the steps you're taking together. It's equally important to recognize that patience is not the same as passivity. Embracing the long-term perspective doesn't mean ignoring your own needs or tolerating unhealthy behavior. It's about balancing patience with self-respect and ensuring that the relationship remains mutually fulfilling. If you find yourself feeling consistently neglected or unhappy, it's okay to reevaluate the situation and set boundaries. Patience is a tool for building connection, not a license for one-sided effort. Another key aspect of patience is celebrating the small victories. Progress with an avoidant might look different than it would in other relationships, but it's no less significant. A moment of vulnerability, a willingness to engage in a deeper conversation, or even just a subtle shift in their behavior can all be signs that they're moving toward greater openness. Acknowledging and appreciating these moments not only strengthens your bond but also reinforces their sense of safety and trust. Ultimately, practicing patience and embracing the long-term perspective is about recognizing that meaningful relationships take time to grow and evolve. It's about committing to the journey rather than rushing toward a destination. By focusing on steady, consistent efforts and maintaining an attitude of empathy and understanding, you create the conditions for the relationship to flourish in a way that feels authentic and sustainable.